So, Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn were guests on my old mate Piers Morgan's show. Let's have a little listen to something they said, or some of the things they said.
Your dad intervened with the egg throwing and put his arm, I think, on your throat. And at the second press conference, you basically threatened Nigel Benn. Said if he did that again, you deal with him. And
it wasn't a threat, it was a promise.
Oh, it's not a promise, is it?
You can't touch
scumbag.
You can't
touch me.
So you can throw an egg in his face and his father can't.
No,
me and him are fighting.
You're just upset.
Me and you are fighting.
Can't stand you. And my dad has my back. You are. That's all.
I'm not upset.
My dad put.
Me and you are fighting. Whatever happens between us.
My dad would put his arms around you. What are you going to do about it?
No one else.
What are you going to do about it? Tell me.
No one else can touch me.
Tell me.
If they do, there'll be consequences.
Consequences to what?
If anyone else touches me.
What if I was to slap you right now? What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, go on, go ahead.
Yeah, talk about my dad.
I'm not talking about your dad.
No.
But I told him.
But
I told him.
Get off me, please.
My old man would never touch you, so your old man's never going to touch me.
I'll never slap you.
You would never slap me.
Yeah, no,
you put your hands on me twice since my last fight.
When?
You pushed me.
A little push.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You put your hands on me.
Little push and stuff. Stop
moaning
about it.
You put your hands on me.
Stop moaning about it. Little push and shove. Stop moaning about it. Talk about my dad.
You put your hands on me, I put my hands on you.
I'll never disrespect your dad.
Yes, you would. You disrespected him before.
What, the fact that he don't like you? It's a matter of fact.
Okay, well, it's disrespect.
That's a matter of fact. How's that disrespect?
You can't give it and not take it.
You up by talking about my dad. You done up talking about my dad.
By taking this fight.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'm assuming you guys watched this as and when it was. I mean, I thought it was pure old nonsense, but what did you guys
I like
take
the pause at the end there. That was quite interesting, wasn't it? I loved it. I love this. I know you don't like it. I love this fight. And I love this fight because it is getting into the heart of the casual. I'm loving it. And I cannot wait for fight week.
I think Eubank is actually genius at the moment, the way that he's handling this, you know, and I think that they're Conor getting the ump and saying, you know, about grabbing, you know, threatening my dad and rare, you know, just because you give him a slap. Well, he sort of deserved that slap, didn't he?
But by the way,
he deserved that slap, though.
Well, by the way, I also think Chris's point is right. This is a fight between me and you. Whatever I do to you is between me and you. It has nothing to do with your dad.
I totally agree with that.
It's nothing to do with my dad. And I think he's absolutely right. But there's a lot more. There's also a lot more riding on this now, isn't there? Hasn't Eubank Jr. picked up the bait that Eddie Hearn tried to throw at Ben Shalom and put a £1 million bet?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so he's obviously said he put it on Ben Shalom, didn't he? Knowing that Ben would sort of like brick himself and not take the bet at that time. Eubank's picked up on that. Go onto his Instagram, have a look at what he's done there, and he said, "Listen, I want the bet. So let's see where your balls are now. I'll take the bet." Chris is a gambler.
We need to campaign on this because Tyson Fury got out of paying his £1 million bet to Piers Morgan. Let's make sure that Mr. Hearn, doesn't get away with not placing his bet.
Let's see where this goes. Well, he called him a few more things than a rodent, but...
During the interview, Piers Morgan pushed Eubank Jr. on Conor Benn's failed drugs tests. Let's have a listen.
You need to accept, do you not, due process was conducted. And at the end of it, they made conclusions. You may not like the conclusions. You may not accept the conclusions. But they are conclusions which have allowed this fight to happen. Without them concluding that he hadn't done this deliberately, you wouldn't be getting in the ring with him.
Again, fighters can fail drugs tests and appear back in the ring. It's happened 1 million times before and it will happen 1 million times again. This is what's happened with Conor. Whether he is innocent of not knowing that how the drugs got in his system, you're still guilty.
Do you accept that can happen?
Because
do you accept that can
as a fighter, it is your job to know everything you are eating, drinking, putting into your system. If you don't monitor it and somebody slips something in somewhere, which I do not believe, but if that's what he's trying to say happened, it's still your fault, you're still guilty, you're still a drugs cheat, and we still have to make an example of it.
Conor, you've said to me before, it's been your position, I think, that you believe it may have come from contaminated eggs. Is that still your position about it? Is that what you think is the...
The case is done. I'm not here to talk about the case at all. It's, you know...
I'm only asking because he hit you with an egg, obviously.
He can do what he wants. He's an idiot. And he's an idiot that's going to get chinned come April 26. Period.
All of the points that Chris makes are, in essence, right. But if you're so offended, the simple thing is, don't fight what you consider to be a drug cheat. And if you want to fight him, and you are going to fight him, why don't you pack up the ball about the drugs cheat because you've chosen to fight him now.
I'll tell you,
so isn't it all a bit irrelevant?
No, I'll tell you why he's doing it. It's obviously because this is the mind games. This is where it begins, and he's trying to rattle Conor.
I know why he's doing it.
Yeah, he knows he's an emotional kid, and he's playing the mind games. He's rightly so. You know, we've got to remember
premeditated mind games.
Yeah, Conor Benn has been cleared to box. They still haven't proved why it was in the system. It was still there, but he's been cleared to box. That's where they're at with it now. Chris Eubank is picking up on that. That's why he's calling him a drug cheat. That's why he's saying you've never proved that it's not in your system.
But it's a transparent agenda, isn't it? But I'm digging perhaps a little bit more behind it because I'm looking at it more literally and laterally, which is if I'm Conor Benn on the side of this, I know what he's going to do. I'm going to, and my argument would be, surely, if I were to push back on it, if you think this is so offensive to you,
why are you fighting me?
Why are you fighting me then?
Yeah.
The reason why you're fighting me is because you need some money, Chris, or whatever the tactic is.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, I mean, the big argument rages about the cleared and exonerated point of view, which I don't accept that he's been cleared or exonerated. I accept that he's been cleared to have this fight.
Yes, of course.
And the argument then raises about what actually transpired, and the debate is that Conor can actually release the findings of the NADP if he chooses to, and the confidentiality is at his bequest. So if he's so cleared, why doesn't he let everybody know what actually transpired? And my argument would be because he doesn't want to, because perhaps the outcomes don't clear him in the way that people suggest he's been cleared, right?
And we're not quite sure.
Well, not quite sure, but my understanding of it is reasonably understood that the confidentiality order is something that Conor can waive if he wants to.
And it would stop
assuming,
all these conversations
correct.
and all these...
I'm assuming...
Dead in their track.
Absolutely.
But I'm assuming he doesn't want to release that confidentiality for one of two reasons. One, he doesn't like what it's going to say, or two, there's a compensation situation manifesting itself and maybe it compromises that. But when you listen to these exchanges and the debate going on between Chris, who's trying to land the point about what you are and what you're not, even though it's a hypocritical thing to do because you've chosen to fight him, even though Chris was prepared to fight him on Kalle Sauerland's advice on the basis of it was a drug that shouldn't concern him. So it's all hypocrisy. But does Conor come out of these exchanges looking more likely to have been the recipient of a bad set of circumstances or more guilty as a result of these exchanges?
I mean,
I know where I'm sat on it.
The casuals might be listening to Eubank and thinking he's guilty. Us in boxing, we know that the situation is very complex, complicated, difficult. Ultimately, something seems to be found in his system originally. Did he put his hands up and say, look, it was in my system, I don't know how it got there.
Adam, the situation is this. It was in his system at the time when he got the ban, or when he got his licence revoked. It was in his system.
Didn't happen.
It still has not been clear to anybody that it wasn't in his system, but he's been cleared to box. That's what we got to remember.
He's been cleared to box.
That's all it is. But it was still in the system, right? And that is it. And that's never been cleared up. He's never proved that. And whether he says he can prove his innocence, we'll prove it then, and it stops this debate. But it was in his system. And that's it.
Right. And
twice.
And that's the point we always argue
by the way.
And the unfortunate thing for the poor in Conor Benn's situation is he never made a claim about eggs. He wasn't him.
Yeah, it was WBC.
He never made any defence about eggs. In fact, he refuted and disputed the idea of eggs. So he's actually being castigated for things that he never said.
But what was his defence, by the way? Then what did he say? How he got there?
I think there was an element of contamination. Was the argument, and that was pushed back by the WBC because they can't have their clean boxing program or their fights being able to, they can't have their apparatus dismantled. So I think there's a variety of arguments that no one can be 100% across. But look, during most of these exchanges, I think we kind of universally agree that Chris is running riot, whether it's with Eddie Hearn or it's at someone else's expense.
But it's about Conor's emotions as well. I mean, he is being riled, and Nigel never beat Chris, so he had the draw and he had the loss. So the Benns want.
But there's a point why I'm saying that, because in this next piece of VT, I think Conor lands a few metaphoric blows on Chris Eubank Jr.
We are where we are, whether we like it or not, because of our dads.
That's true.
They laid the foundations. Yeah, we have to work hard. Yeah, we have to go through adversity. Yeah, we have to go through Nepo kids. But ultimately, this is the blessings of our dads. They laid the foundation for us. So it's sad to see that the relationship ain't working on their end, genuinely, and I mean that. It's sad to see. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that being funny, because the relationship I have with my dad, it would be great to see you and your dad in your corner. I mean that. No sarcasm, not being a...
It's hard to believe.
No, I'm being... Well,
I've got to be careful. I don't want you drawing me into something.
No, listen, I'm just saying.
He's being sincere.
No, because you haven't heard the things he said leading up to this interview.
About you. Yeah, about you. Of course, I think you're an idiot.
About our relationship, my father's relationship.
Your dad don't like you. Yes, I agree. Your dad don't like you. It's a matter of, that's a fact.
Him talking about him,
it's a fact.
I take everything he's saying with a grain of salt. I can't help it.
Okay, well, it's a matter of fact your dad don't like you, why is he be here? It's not really, it's not me just saying that or speculating that. It's the truth. But
you don't know what the truth is.
Okay.
You think
you don't know what the truth is. You think you know. It's all right back at you. But what I'm trying to say to you is it would be nice to see your dad there in your corner.
Like Chris is pulling at a thread with the drug cheat allegation. He's pulling at a thread with about his relationship with his father.
Yeah.
You know, about whether he likes him or he doesn't like him. I don't think, alongside whether his father does or doesn't like what his son's doing, he certainly doesn't like this fight.
No, he doesn't.
I think that's at the centre of it. And I remember Chris Senior telling me, in no uncertain terms, it was a bit witchy-poo, it didn't make a lot of sense, but he was suggesting that he was in fact the reasons why the first fight had been stopped, and it was his, you know,
he hated it before, didn't he?
Well, he hated
first time.
I think he hated it before because of the weight that it was made at, and Chris Senior, who had injured a boxer in the ring as well, understands, you know, the dangers,
and he was
the
accusing people of potentially committing murder, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was against that. Yeah. And the reason why, from my understanding with Chris Eubank Jr., while he's not going to be involved in this one right now, is because relationships are broken down with the loss of the brother with Sebastian, Chris having those mental health issues, which we all saw, and everything else, but also the fact that he's not in control of this whole thing.
But
Simon.
I think I have always felt, and I said it to Chris Senior, that it is this young man's gift to be his own man and ultimately to travel in his own direction and to come out from underneath your shadow. And all I heard from Chris Senior in either the upfront interview I did with him or live on talkSPORT with Jim White was me, and I felt sorry for Junior because he is a 34-year-old man at the time. He wants his own thing. His father is always going to be the centre of attention. Yeah. I think he's right to make his own decisions.
Simon, I see exactly what you're saying because Nigel has stood back from Conor's career and Chris Senior was right in the front at the beginning. And I think it's great that Junior is walking his own path.
So do I.
However, they have had horrendous tragedy in their family.
I know they have.
With the loss of their wonderful brother Sebastian, lovely guy. And also, you know, Chris has had his difficulties senior and that relationship, you all want to see your father and son. And I think actually what Conor said there, I think he hates Junior, Conor Benn, but I think what he was saying there is it would be good to have your dad there, not just for the fight and just for the promotion, which obviously it would be, but actually it'd be really good because my dad's here and it'd be good to have your dad there as well to complete the story.
Well, Simon was right though that it was all because Chris wanted to control this whole situation with Junior, wanted to be the guy, wanted to be the centre. Well, actually, it's about Junior. And I think when Junior took those reins back,
didn't like it.
Chris didn't like it.
Could Senior come back in and just be a bit part player in the last week?
Well,
I think we could
the big
see
expression he felt was that the advice that was being given, the things that Chris Eubank Jr. was being exposed to were fundamentally wrong. And he said, if you don't listen, you're going to feel. That was his big message because he felt that Eubank Jr. was being given the wrong guidance by the wrong people in the wrong place, was put in jeopardy. And of course, he felt that was the wrong thing for his son to experience. I think it's a combination of two. I think there's an element of that, and I think there's an element of jurisdiction that he thinks he's entitled to over his son. Do you expect him? Because I do. I think this circus doesn't have its full roster of entertainers if you haven't got the two fathers in the mix.
I think
we need Senior there. We need him there, and we need him, to complete the story, the legacy, the years, and everything else. But most importantly, for me, we need him there because it's his son in a massive fight.
I think that we do see him there, if I'm totally honest. Could you imagine seeing him there on the Harley, coming in on the Harley? So the first time we actually see him, reliving that time, you know, that would be insane.
Junior sort of...
practising his 2 new words of the week.
Absolutely.
He's acquired.
Absolutely.
Junior welcoming him in.
On the Harley.
It's going to happen.
Fantastic.
Come on.
Fantastic. Well, now, for you guys out there, don't forget you can see Piers Morgan's interview with Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn in full on the Piers Morgan Uncensored YouTube channel now.